was telling Democrats, hey, this thing called the midterm effect virtually guarantees you're going to win control of the House, and these other analysts are undercutting it. Actually, it's going to be like 40 seats, because I was telling them what they wanted to hear, and it was good news, right? So I'm only mentioning that because I want anyone listening to this who wants to pretend that the midterm effect isn't a thing. It's a thing, and now it's against us, right? And we
Right.
also have this other structural disadvantage in the gerrymander, because we're good people who want good government. And so we use our blue state control to make it impossible to partisan gerrymander and put it in the hands of nonpartisan commissions, which was a good idea, except for the Republican Party is going to use control of their states to gerrymander the living fuck out of every place, and they might be able to gerrymander themselves a House majority, right? So those are two structural disadvantages we're facing.
And you think we
We
can
have a
defeat
third.
those? We can actually beat
Oh,
that? I mean, those are
oh,
pretty big things.
listen.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt, Zeb. Let me
Well,
let me
it's
go.
my job to clarify.
I know. You've got to hear the third structural disadvantage that we face, because
Yeah.
it's just as important. The third is that we run an electioneering system. It's like this. It's like New York versus development out west, right?
Mm.
Our election system was put together, by necessity, built in flight, versus building a city out west. They had the benefits of to development, knowing about cars and whatever, and designing shit to be smarter. We need to do that with our electoral system from the top to the bottom, right?
Right.
And it's more than, people are very conscious that we have a messaging problem, and that is true. And the strategic plan is going to spend a lot of work on that. But that's not the only problem that we have, okay? Because even if we fix messaging, we have a message delivery problem, we have a strategy problem, we have a tactical deployment problem. So I'm putting out a guide as to what I think will give us the best odds against a very strong fundamental against us. I'm going to point to some recent performance by the GOP against strong fundamentals that suggest strategy matters, modernized electoral methodologies make a difference, and I'm going to beg that we build a shield in these competitive races in the House and the Senate, and try our very best to hold on to democracy, because it's really our last shot.
Rachel, that sounds great. We only have 10 months. I mean, is there really
Yep.
a chance for us to do all of that reworking that
Not
we need to do
within,
within 10 months?
yeah, not within the system, because the system is so bifurcated and decentralized. So what I'm doing in the strategic plan is I'm making a case. Look, we have a house. We have in the democratic world of electioneering, we have this house, but really it's got three legs, okay? And the fourth leg of it is missing entirely. And for now, the best we can do in a triage situation is come and finish that fourth leg, right?
Mm.
And ultimately, the whole house is architecturally not optimal. By building this fourth leg, this shield project for these competitive races, the strategic plan is not it's not the long term ideal, but at least gets that transition going. But the goal will be triage, put this shield in place, and you have this suboptimal other system operating to elect Democrats. We're going to handicap it, right?
I
Next to what's going on. But the goal long term is to replace that suboptimal system, because if 85% of our effort of money that gets spent is spent in ways that are not optimal, then we're never going to be able to take advantage of our numbers advantages in the population effectively, right? So that's really it's a short term oh shit doom plan.
right.
It's the only plan I think that gives us any chance. I mean, we just lost Virginia.
Yeah.
In
If we
the
don't win,
best,
this election, I mean, everyone's thinking
yeah,
is that democracy is dead. That there really is nothing
yeah,
afterwards. I mean, once we
yeah,
don't win the next elections, the midterms, we're
yeah,
screwed. There's no way to
yeah.
save democracy. Is that? Do you
Yeah,
guys all concur with that? Is that your?
you're not
That's not
going
what I
to win
think.
today.
I don't think there's very much like to do afterwards. I mean,
Yeah,
we're sort of done.
No, I do believe that.
I
I
think
do
that we
believe
also,
that.
well, I
Go,
think a
Jeff.
lot of us find ourselves, I mean, I can speak for myself on this one, which is on one hand, we want to support all the investigations. We don't want to be like demanding things and, saying things that are going to be harmful to those investigations. We want to trust those systems are happening on a good level. On the other hand, it's like from my point of view, like when we were doing the Q show for Vice,
Mm-hmm.
We hired a crew in December to go to the January 6th insurrection because we knew it was going to happen.
Right.
Because it was obvious. And so if we knew that was going to happen, the FBI, either they didn't know, which is worse almost, or they did and they didn't do anything. And so I think that a lot of people, myself included, are kind of caught in this middle space of like, well, we want to trust that this is going forward. We don't want to be, interfering with that in a negative way. But also, we've just been played. We all trusted that the FBI, that the National Guard, that all these people would actually have our backs on that day, and they didn't.
I agree.
Yeah. And in fact, for 5 years, we've been played.
The day, like 2 days before that, I did a podcast with Jonathan Metzl, who you should have on this show. And I don't know if he's watching, but he has a great book. Everyone should read it. It's called Dying of Whiteness. And it will explain why trying to deal with marrying economic populism and curing racism is going to be tough. Okay.
Yeah.
So you should definitely read that book. But anyway, him and I, we had a show and we were sitting there looking at the 6th. It was like the 3rd and worried, like we were terrified. We knew this was coming. How could they have not even had security at the Capitol? I mean, yes. Right. So that's really what the strategic plan and strike pack is about.
But we also know that we also know we may not win the next elections. Sorry. We also know we may not win the next elections, and we know that democracy dies after that. I mean, we're sort of all staring at this thing. It's a very awkward, horrible, train crash happening in front of our eyes, and we're watching it happen in almost real time. And there is nothing, it seems, that we can do about it legislatively or even in whatever campaign strategic planning you might come up with. It doesn't seem to me that there's many paths out. I mean, because once you've got all these state legislatures now empowered to validate the votes, which is what they have, or many of them are getting, it kind of becomes mute to the rest of the election process, because they'll just decide whatever they want to decide. And we've clearly got a Supreme Court that's very much in the will do whatever they need to do for Trump and company. So, I feel like we're in a real emergency, as opposed to we can follow the path and the processes and the usual things that we might normally do. That doesn't feel to me like it's going to work anymore.
Well, I think we have to consider the possibility that, and this is a scary possibility, but that the rot is actually even deeper than we think. I mean, I follow this incredibly closely. I didn't even know Charles Flynn had been promoted after the election. The fact that Charles Flynn, Mike Flynn's brother, was in the room deciding if the National Guard was going to respond to January 6th is insane. Yeah. Think about how many people had to have known that he was in that room, why he was in that room, and his connection to Mike Flynn, and everybody was just cool with it.
Yep, and they lied about it. They lied about it to cover it up, and then they sent him off to his new assignment and pretended nothing was going on. I mean, it's just look, this rot is deep
because they fucking knew. They knew it was so cagey that they knew enough to lie about it. So it's like the excuse that they could have in the military culture. I get that it is apolitical and it is really a doctrine. I'm from a military family, okay, so it's not bullshit. It is a thing. It is a real thing in the civil service too, okay? And it would be a valid reason to say, well, we just didn't even think about it, dude. Yeah. But then they lie about it on the tail end, so you fucking know they could have thought about it. And you're damn right, there's tails. We now know. We know it. There's tails that go from Trump to the orders to not come and give that backup. There's not preventative active measures taken to come down there for sure, because Trump or somebody was preventing the FBI from being aggressive in that, or they were terrified to do so because of Trump. So it's, it doesn't necessarily have to be an explicit order, but there are
there were explicit orders. There's explicit orders to the National Guard to stand down that day.
And also, here's the tell on all of this, because you brought up Liz Cheney before. We're talking about Dick Cheney. At the time when they wrote, all the living secretaries of defense signed that op-ed and said, this was a week or two before that happened, and wrote this op-ed in I think it was in the Washington Post, or was it in the New York Times? It was one or the other, where they reminded the military of their duty, that we have the peaceful transfer of power in this country. And you had to ask yourself, they're so embedded, even if they're not Trumpists, the Cheney family and Dick Rums, and Rumsfeld at the time, I think, was still with us and signed it. And, like they're in those conversations. They're at those parties. They have those contacts.
Right.
They especially into the Defense Department, 2 former secretaries of defense. Clearly, they were hearing these things. They didn't just write that thing for the hell of it. They were hearing that people were trying to tell, various military police forces to either aid and abet this thing or to stand down and allow it to happen. So that's the key to me, is that op-ed doesn't just come from nowhere.
You're 100%
and I think
right.
Liz Cheney wants us to know that too, by the way. I don't think Liz Cheney
I do too.
doesn't want us to know that. I think her whole fucking purpose in life right now is to get to the point, Cliff, on the day that we get to find that out. That is honest to God what I think.
There's news tonight about these new memos by another Trump lawyer. This was related to Pence. And this is, again, more detailed memos. In 2 memos, she writes one to, let me put this in full screen so you guys can read it properly.
Yeah.
This is, what's her name again? This is, one second.
Oh, God, Jenna Ellis.
Jenna Ellis, the mystery lawyer. So she's writing here to Donald Trump in this one email, which talks about this attorney-client privileged communication for some reason. And it says in his formal request, the vice president should require a response from each state legislature no later than 7 p.m. Eastern time on January the 15th, 2021. So their whole plan was that they were going to delay. He wasn't going to complete counting the votes. He was going to dispute some of the counting, send it back to the state legislatures, and then have them come back for the January the 15th. So create some sort of crisis, some sort of delay. We'd not seen this before. And then she does the second email, which goes into greater detail here of how they're going to do it. I mean, it's obviously on very shaky constitutional grounds, but she does say at the very end here, which I think is really telling. Therefore, the vice president should begin alphabetically in order of the states, and coming first to Arizona, not open the purported certification. This is really significant, that because you remember during the middle of this whole insurrection, Paul Gosar, of all people, the congressman from Arizona, was insisting that he does his count thing. And everyone was wondering, this chaos going on. Why is it so important that Paul Gosar does his thing? It was important that he had to start the count in order, I suspect, because they wanted Pence to then halt it. And that's why it was such a critical thing that he actually got back, I think, during the mayhem. Like, there's chaos going around. He's like, I've got to start the count. And that always stood out to me and to our investigators a narrative as to, what was he really up to? And I think this helps, helps fill in some of the blanks there. But it's a very telling document. Again, it's detailed, step by step, how to do a coup. This is less about a coup, more about stopping the vote, but it's certainly connected with all the other things. It's a coup.
No, that's a coup.
Right, that's a coup.
Well, they'll argue differently. I know it's a coup. They know
that no fraud has occurred. Okay, so they not just suspect it at this point. They know it beyond a shadow of a doubt because they have tried in every perverted way to find some, and they have fucking failed, right? And so we are now talking about the most verified, validated, safeguarded election in the history of this country, and that's what they want to do. So that is a coup part.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. And Pence may be the person who actually goes down saving the republic if it indeed does get saved, because he didn't actually follow the rules here, and he did. So who would imagine he would be the hero to save America? I should tell everyone that, by the way, we're late on the YouTube channel, and I hope it's working now. I apologize for that. And also, if anyone wants to comment, it's narrative.org/TV, narrative.org/TV for our interactive player, where you can comment and do all sorts of, send us all dirty messages or whatever messages you want to do. That's the place to do it, at narrative.org/TV. Don't send us dirty messages.
I think we had our, you wanted to say something, didn't you?
Yeah. So I think that an important point, and we do talk about this as a slow moving coup, but I think it's important to look back at any revolution or coup in the past. Like when the Bastille was stormed, they weren't like, oh, we're living in the French Revolution. this is all going to go this way. It was just another riot and another thing. Oh, this important building was taken out. There were only 5 prisoners there anyway. Who cares? So, the path of revolution and coups is really worn on these incidents where they pass by and people think, oh, that was it. Absolutely. Third Reich.
Yeah.
So we have awareness of this thing. I mean, we know it's happening. It's even worse knowing it's happening in some ways, because what are we doing to stop it is the question. And
can I add something?
Yeah, Cliff, go ahead.
Well, so you showed that memo, and I hadn't seen it before, by Jenna Ellis, and it reminded me of something. And even more, these are such evil fuckers, and they use the levers of power that they control. And what popped in my head as I saw that, as they're trying to run out the time to January 15th, now everybody may remember, but Bush v. Gore, that was the justification that bullshit Supreme Court used, their partisan justification for shutting down the counting, is they said, oh, well, we just don't have any time anymore. The time's going to run out. Of course there was time. But that was what they did. That was the final way they shut everything down, was by saying, we don't have time. So if you think about that, they're going by that Supreme Court's playbook. Thomas is still on that court. Kennedy is still on that court. You know what I mean? In other words, do I know that they coordinated this with those guys? I don't, but I know that they know that those guys had found a justification to shut down a count in 2000. So now they're going to try to do the same thing, and they could count the Supreme Court to do the same thing.
The people in the chat are also mentioning here, and a story that just broke before we got to air here, but it is an interesting story about Kanye West as well. The threat, it sounds ridiculous, all these stories, but they're actually true. It was apparently threatening a Georgia vote official, saying you'll have no freedom for 48 hours. This is following the Ratzenberger call, sorry. So that is interesting, and I'll follow up on that story and see if I can pull up the Reuters piece. But, it does seem like there's this actual mob, not the storming mob, but an actual organized criminal element, including people like Kanye West, that was doing a lot of really shady stuff and maybe threatening officials on a state level quite widely. We've had reports of that from a few people on the show. So we might not just be seeing a slow rolling coup, but we also might be seeing an actual attack on the country.
Oh, Seth, you don't know this story yet? Wait till you read this story, dude. Oh my God. I'm so sorry to interrupt
this one?
you, but this is a fucking Titanic, dude. All right. I thought it was just like some wacky shit when it came across my Twitter, but then I figured out, okay, no, this is some crazy shit. You got to watch the video, but there's this woman that was identified in a video in Georgia moving a suitcase off of a shelf. Okay.
Right.
She was just a rando who needed a job. And then she ended up being targeted by the GOP, and they were trying to prove that she was this fraud person. And I knew about her being harassed, but today I find out that Kanye West sent somebody from his staff down there to pretend that he had sent like a person to protect her, like that she was under threat, and he was, sending his own personal body, like security team to help her, but she had to confess to like whatever had happened, and like coordinated probably with the Trump campaign to intimidate her into admitting that she had done this thing that like Giuliani had all caked up, dude. And
oh my God.
Keep in mind though, and I'm just going to tee this up, you can work it in after your initial response, but I know you're going to like this shit, because here's the thing we're freaking out about, Cliff, too, and Brian, like no one gives a fuck, right? About, we have a coup, and like we're talking about inflation and turkey prices, right? The Kardashians are going to tie in, right? So here we have this Kanye conspiracy with Don Jr. and Trump, and Kim is divorcing Kanye, and because the civil suit for this thing is going to be, it's going to be huge, dude. So like we might actually get regular people to care if we can tie the Kardashians.
Well, the headline today was about the Kardashians was that Kanye used her name in a concert. That was the big headline that I saw about them. So I don't think people are caring. Hey, Jack, I know you've got to run in a few minutes because you're only got a short time with us, but I wanted to give you at least a few more minutes to talk about what your whole point today was, how no one's paying attention, like all of us, really. That was our point. Keep going on that theme, if you will.
And I think that's a question that we all have to sort of tell ourselves in the mirror. That is right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to do a lot of sort of podcast mini series that I've been working on that will tell sort of stories that have sort of thriller genre, true crime genre, but are about politics, that are about what's going on right now. And I think that we, as I'm assuming just by everyone listening to this, is a progressive, that there are not enough people that agree with us on cultural issues to win a majority. There are not enough people that have the same values as us completely to win a majority. And so we have to start talking to people in a way that's just about, we don't have to give up the social issues. We need those. But we also need to start talking more about economic issues in a way that it's going to respond to somebody in West Virginia is going to hear it and, actually realize that it involves them as well. That the politics is not just about identity. It's also, or about sort of this outside identity. It's also about your family. It's about you being able to make money. It's about you being able to drink clean water. And that there are, and include these in narratives. You know what I mean? Like, we like to give information of like, oh, hey, like this would be better because of this, as opposed to framing it in the story. And the right is really good at doing that, of telling people a story that is going to fulfill cultural ideas and their already existing suspicions, and then populating that story with their fears.
Yeah, I mean, they create narratives. They create narratives in our real world, whether it's like, Rittenhouse or whatever. They're created events. I mean, they're manufactured events, but they sell a story and they sell it in the right tone that they're intending to get it out there. The left does not do this. The left has not figured out that this is what they have to do.
Part of it is about intentionally saying, okay, here is this kind of, and a large part of it is that Democrats have to appeal to a wide swath of people. African Americans in Chicago don't necessarily vote the same way as Silicon Valley guys in San Francisco. What appeals to them, messaging that appeals to them is different, whereas Republicans really just have to target one angry white dude in the middle of America. And that message you can apply to a lot of different places. But I think that the messaging, midterms being sort of ground zero for all of this stuff, we need to get our messaging in check more. We have things that appeal to the right. I think one of the things that, just doing some surveys and looking at the right a lot, is especially the sort of crazy right wing, they're on economic issues, they're not crazy right wingers. It's all cultural stuff that's being sold at them. And so you can actually get a fair amount of motion if you're just focused on how policy fits into narrative. And on the right, they're happy to do that. On the left, we're terrified of it.
Yeah, we don't tell those stories well at all. I mean, we just look at what's going on in Texas and the backslide of all our rights, no matter, we saw today the incredibly weird ruling by the Supreme Court. That's not a good ruling for anyone on the left. I mean, people were celebrating it. I was like, they're basically giving you a tiny slice of law where you can go and to fight this thing. It's not really, doesn't look like it's protecting rights. And of course, we're going to see gay rights go down the same route, and every other right that we've really earned in the last 50 years is going to go down with, in the same way as abortion. Those are the kinds of things that can really motivate people if you can tell them in a good narrative, if you can show them how it's affecting people in their real lives today, that can really impact people. So, Jack, I know you got to run. So I don't want to.
Thank you very much. I'll be back soon. Sorry, I have to jump off.
Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. You're fantastic.
Thanks. Good to meet you, Jack.
Good to meet you.
Okay, I got to do a couple of fast switches here, so let me do that. Okay, and we are. Well, why don't you pick up on that, Cliff or Rachel, whatever you guys want to say?
Well, I'd like to say, because I'm interested to see if Rachel agrees with me on this as the polling maestro, but I agree with almost everything Jack said there. On my podcast a lot, and other places where I write for the Daily Beast, and whatever, I talk a lot about our failures of messaging, the fact that we don't talk to people. I mean, human beings have communicated over generations before TV, believe it or not, with stories. We told each other stories, and there's a story. Every good story has a good guy, a bad guy. It should touch people emotionally. The right gets this. Why we can't do it when when we've got trial lawyers and Hollywood on our side, who are two of the best groups of storytellers that exist, I don't know. I've never been able to understand it. Why that is. But to get to the key point, and I'll see if Rachel agrees with me, the only thing I disagree with that Jack was saying there is I don't actually, if you frame it the right way, on most cultural issues, the majority actually agrees with us. It's that we don't do that. We, they want to go against the vaccine mandate. They make it about freedom. They make it about, this and that. Do we do that with abortion rights? Do we do that with gay rights? Do we do that? We just are so bad at telling these stories and messaging our issues. Anytime you look at anything in polling, them, 60% plus believe in Roe, 90% plus want background checks on all guns. I can go on and on through that kind of stuff. And the last thing I'll say is the other thing they're really good at is they find that one sliver that usually is not even true, right? partial birth abortion, or like that one thing that will scare people. Where are we saying, to every Republican running for the House or Senate or anything, where are we saying you want to force women to have their rapist's baby? Because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That is
it's a rape
part of
law.
it. That is right. That is the right.
Right.
That is the extreme.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just say, hey, you know what? We'll go into Ohio and, we're going to tell them a narrative story about how much better, now their lives are better and their kids' education's better and they've got Build Back Better and there's childcare shit. And that shit has to get done. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying, hey, don't ever do any of that stuff or fund any of that stuff. But it would be nice to think we could win that way when the other side is going to be yelling, they're socialists that want to defund the police.
Right.
And, actually, it's much worse. I mean, DeSantis is running in a swing state. He's a sitting governor of a major swing state. And his fundraising pitch right now is centered on sending Fauci to jail. Dr. Fauci. I mean, come on, guys.
But that's what's working for them. It's exactly what's working for them.
That's what I mean. But they do that with lies. Right. Yes. They do it with lies. And what makes me so angry is we won't even do it with the truth. Again, we're not lying. They want to force women to have
them to death with fucking flowers right now, guys. Right. Okay, the fucking country's on fire, and I hate.
I'm just right. They want to force women. As I say, they want to force women to have their rapist babies.
And it is about narratives and personalizing shit. And the Republican Party, they are fucking beast at making mountains out of molehills, right? So CRT, Democrats don't think we can make voters care about crumbling democracy and a coup by the whole Republican Party when the Virginia electorate was made to think about their kids' curriculum. Their kids' curriculum, dude. And they did it because they don't focus on this macro shit with newspapers flashing and graphics, graphs and stats and shit. They sat one nice middle-aged white lady down, and she looked real angsty about, her kid reading black porn in high school. Yeah. And she even showed her hands angsty, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, she was a good actress.
And yes, the Bit-A-Cup or Strike Pack ad that I've never, we can't finance. These are ads that scare the living fucking shit out of women, dude. This is oh my God, I'm going to die of cancer because I can't get an abortion. These are ads that are oh my God, I'm going to be forced to bear my rapist baby, and then they're going to sue me for custody of it.
No, but why don't we have that? Where is that story?
Right? People
That's what I mean.
Just that you bring, okay, this is what 22 with Republicans back in control of your shit looks like, and leave it at that. It looks like for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I want you to run through this.
My voice, if you can hear my voice, and you think that in our special circumstance right now, which is, we're all going to be living in some totalitarian nightmare in 18 months, that this sounds like a more feasible approach than, this long, not unimportant, not uninvestable work that should continue. I'm just saying, we are not doing any of this work right now. There is zero money going to this work, and we really need to finance it,
I'd like to hear your analysis on this thing you gave us here, which is, basically this is a Virginia election analysis, and it tells you that McAuliffe lost by a significant amount to. Why don't you tell me? You're the expert at this. Why don't you tell me what I'm looking at here?
Oh man, you're looking at pain for me, dude. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because a year ago, I started meeting with people, and it was a crazy idea. I'm a nobody with a community college single mom, and I built a super PAC because I'm okay, the only way we can win elections is if we change the system. The system sucks. It's not just the messaging. It's not just in this. All that shit is all limbs. The whole tree, the root, the soil must be yanked, and it must be designed around understanding how modern voters behave in polarization, how the opponent behaves, and their machine works, because it is a fully well-heeled machine that eats us electorally, right? And understanding that turnout surge and decline is going to be predictable based on in-party, out-party dynamics, negative partisanship, and that excitement factor that comes with being out-of-party power. Mm-hmm. And if you know that, and you're looking at a state like Virginia, a year out, I was able to say, look, Virginia is not likely blue. It's a lean blue state that fell out of competition because you had this huge turnout factor with Trump in office. And now that's gone. And now we're going to see what we're going to see when they start polling Virginia, I said, is 10, 15 point enthusiasm gaps in the data. And lo and behold, when they started polling, what do you see, right? And what that meant, I said, a year out, was that what we're going to see is declines in the margins on turnout of the lower committed people within that Democratic coalition. And some of those people will be Democrats in the voter file. Some of them are going to be left-leaning independents, and all of them spell trouble. We can find them specifically in the voter file, though, because we can identify who they are through their whole history of the voter file. They're most likely going to be people who entered after 2016, keeping in control for age. And then through that, we can target them through demographic factors, right? Mm-hmm. So let's design a strategy that instead of looking at Northern Virginia as the political center, because college education rates are so good up there, let's build not from the strongest point out, but from the weakest link up. Okay. And we have to do that because otherwise you run the risk of shedding so much statewide vote through these different House and district races that you lose statewide. I was less worried about that, and I'll be frank about that, but I was more worried that that statewide fall off would disperse in a way that they would lose the House of Delegate trifecta that they had, okay? And so, of course, election night, oh, look at this, Youngkin converted all these suburbanites. And, I'm sitting there like I'm just waiting because I'm not a very talented analyst, but I knew that some really good analysts had gotten on the hunt of this conversion persuasion analytic map. And here we have two of the best political scientists in the whole discipline. And they took a look at that Virginia vote, and it shows unequivocally exactly what I said was going to happen happened. Exactly the way that I said.
Explain this to us, because we're not. I'm not a statistician, and I don't know what I'm looking at here. I've got a blue.
Okay, all right. So, look, regardless of Politico's headline about my work, right? My theory does not say anything about there not being any swing voters. There are swing voters. We call them persuasion voters. You can call them conversion voters. There are base mobilization voters, turnout voters, right? And you have to get to, you have to win conversion voters. You have to get as many partisan voters to the polls. But the way the electorate behaves, America, is most people are partisan voters, even independents, right? And they lean Republican, they lean Democrat, they predictably vote a certain way. And when you understand that about the electorate, then it becomes really focused on, okay, how do I convert as many of these independents as possible? But I really need to make sure I don't get, the electorate's 40% Republican, 30% Democrat, or I'm going to lose, right? So you're really focused on that as well. What this is looking at is the statewide distribution, right? And you have the total number of votes for Biden and Trump, right, in 2020 on that y-axis. Right. And it's looking at how heavy were each of these precincts for Biden or Trump, right? And it's going to compare that with Youngkin and McAuliffe's vote shares to see, okay, this district that went really super hot for Trump, did it go super hot for Youngkin or less super hot? And then same story for Biden.
So Biden basically lost a lot here, is what you're saying. Looking at this, it was a massive amount.
I think the technical term is a shitload.
Yeah, shitload.
Yeah, what we want to know is, all right, what this is showing is that Biden lost a shit ton of votes in areas where it's safe blue, right? And if they had just gotten those Biden voters to come out and vote for McAuliffe in those places, they would have been fine. And then my guess is when the analytics for the voter file don't come out for a while for Virginia, but when we get down in that data, my guess is we're going to find out that the predictors for these fall off are pretty obvious. They're going to be those leaning independents because they tend to be more ideological, not less than your average Democrat, and younger, but also it's going to be college education. And that's why I wanted to build a strategy that really hammers
so
in.
This doesn't augur well for next fall. And I mean, Cliff, you're a political strategist too. What's the messaging issue here that we need to do? It seems pretty desperate. I mean, I hate to sound like that because I don't like to be like that, but it does sound pretty desperate.
Well, that's
Well,
let
it
me
is.
share a real quick clip though. It's because it's not it's not just message.
Yeah.
What this is saying that, and I just want to do this clip, and then you can riff all you want.
Yeah, sure.
This is showing it's not just the message, okay? Because you can dicker around about this or that, and they definitely shouldn't have been taking the bait to talk about CRT. We can talk about that on a different show. This is saying our strategy sucks.
Yeah.
The entire fucking system, okay?
Yeah. We don't even have a vision that people can buy into, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading.
No, I mean, the strategy, we need work on all sorts of things. But when it comes to just the messaging part of it, again, not only do we not sort of go on offense, but by not going on offense, then we allow them to get out of what it is they fucked up later. When we're not pinning them to the wall on their shitty economic numbers, later they're able to attack us for inflation, and they're not looked at as hypocrites, right?
Right.
When we don't, I mean, so let me give the more recent example. What I've been running around saying is, anybody remember, it was before I was born, to be honest with you, but or I think I was a year old, Richard Nixon, his famous, saying about the Democrats, acid, amnesty, and abortion. Easy to remember, alliterative. And I've just been going around saying COVID, corruption, and Q. This is what you should be saying the Republican Party is. And constantly, everything should relate to that. Because again, all these parents that were upset, and CRT played into that, but they were pissed because their kids weren't in school. The reason why Youngkin was not held to account for what the Republican Party did is we've never held the Republican Party to account for the fact that hundreds of thousands of people died because of them. Yeah. Right. And
COVID, corruption, and coup, actually, or did you say Q at the end there?
I said Q, but coup
I like
works
coup
too.
as well.
I like coup also. I've gone with both of them. Coup kind of fits under Q because I look at Q as kind of all the crazy shit they do. But it's like, I mean, it should be something that's easy for people to remember, and should be the narrative, and everything they do fits under there. So every time some asshole like Dr. Oz comes out and you find out that he said 3% of kids dying is acceptable to reopen schools, you're like, see, they're the party of COVID. They want to kill your kids. And don't use euphemisms, and don't play nice, and don't, say it the way the Republicans would say it. They want your kids to, for them, they're cool with 3%, hundreds of thousands of kids dying. Okay with that, and this is what, and if we'd driven that point home, then Youngkin would have had to be on defense as opposed to being on offense when it came to issues around COVID in schools. And so like we don't, not only do we not get to the sort of pin them to the wall, but we also in the long term allow them to wiggle out of and actually turn things that they've completely screwed up into positives, and so that's what's so frustrating to me. So you asked me for 22, I would start right away on the three things I'm talking about here. There's so much corruption, obviously, around Trump. I mean, we just found out Trump again gets up on a stage with COVID, doesn't tell anybody. Every time they open their mouths on anything to do with Fauci, you allow this many people to die. You want this many kids to die from this. You quote them, you go after them on it. Every new stupid statement that Marjorie Taylor Greene ties into that on COVID. Same thing with corruption, which is endemic in the Republican Party. It's somebody new every week. And then, decide, go with coup or Q, but whatever it is, you want to overthrow democracy. You think JFK Jr. is coming back and is going to be your president because you're fucking nuts, and that should be tied to all of them.
Exactly. They should be belittled for it too. And this idea that we should not make them, tie them as grossly. I mean, nobody knows these things about them, guys. If you go to the grocery store and ask average people about the Republican, hey, what's your impression of Republicans? Aren't they like low taxes?
Yeah.
That's all they fucking know, dude. Okay. So I'm sorry that people have these like pocket theories about, if I bring Obama in, it's somehow going to make more Republicans vote. Or I don't need signs for my campaign, even though I'm running against an incumbent and nobody knows who the fuck I am.
We're not even running. We're not even running in all the. The Democrats. I haven't even got candidates in a lot of these districts, right? I mean, we don't have candidates in every.
That's a whole nother problem. Yes.
By the way, just before we leave the numbers thing, I think this is an important thing that's going to come around this next few days. If it's not there already, is that we're going to be at this number of dead people, Americans who have died from COVID. And it's going to be really interesting who wears that number, because I guarantee you the Republicans are going to find a way to make it a Biden issue when, in fact, it really is not a Biden issue. And
it's not a guarantee. Ronna McDaniel GOP chair, puts that shit out every day. She'll put out simultaneously on her thread, she'll put out shit that blames Biden for perpetuating and not curing the pandemic, and then the next tweet will be against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah. Oh no, they feel like that's it.
They've all done that. They've blamed Biden and said, "Oh, he said he was going to solve this, and he failed, and whatever." And again, if along the way, every time one of them did what DeSantis does and Abbott does and all these idiots do, if every crazy state legislator who says some stupid thing about Jesus not, Jesus didn't wear a mask, so I shouldn't wear a mask too. Again, how you frame it, you don't attack religion. You just point out that well, I don't think Jesus would want our children to die. I mean, we don't do that. We don't remind people of these things they say every day. One of their guys, another one of them, just who was a conservative, anti-masker. I think he was on the board of elections who wanted to reject the votes in one of the counties in Michigan. He just died of COVID.
Yeah.
I
saw that today.
We don't, as Rachel's saying, nobody knows you go to a grocery store because we don't drive that message every day about them.
So these guys are not going to do it. I mean, we talk about but we're not them. Actually, we're not sitting in the department, the Democratic Party headquarters, determining this, and yet it is our future and it is our country, and we're not doing anything about it. So
no, here's the thing, though. I'm pretty sure there's nobody doing that.
So how do we, the people, actually get to do this kind of stuff? Because ultimately it is a democracy and we can impact these things. We have means. We have smart people like you guys. How do we organize in a way that gets a different message up there? Or is that just dreaming in Technicolor?
An external infrastructure that's basically a private sector version of electioneering, and we do it our fucking selves, right? I mean, isn't that the point? Brian's your other guest was Brian. I'm so terrible.
Jack Bryan. He's got two first names. I mean,
he's so cool. Now I don't even feel bad, dude.
You don't have to feel bad on that one. I've said it a million times.
Brian, Jack, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
No, let's take points out, man. I mean, I think there's a few people in the world, myself included, maybe Cliff, and you would fall into this category, who are like, hey, I can see this shit in plain sight. And I want reaction and action and a counter offense launched, and I want it now, right?
Yeah.
And given the complete, you have to keep in mind, Jamie's a reformer, man. I mean, I don't know that you could put anybody different in the DNC and hope for anything better. I mean, I think he's doing pretty good in there. He runs a bureaucracy. It's an organization and institution. It's not an electioneering strategy shop, okay? There's no electioneering strategy shop per se in the Democratic Party.
Well, there's
the infrastructure, when I said that the two parties have a separate system, I mean it. From the very top to the very bottom, it's going to get all explained in this doc that's coming out. Why our system and our design is our biggest obstacle. It's our only hope is to bypass it for the temp aid and try to build a shield. And I literally call it the strike back shield strategy in these competitive races. Set the tone, right? Someone's got to do the big ball swinging, brand busting, narrative setting shit, because otherwise the narrative is going to be whatever is the headline, and the headline is going to be inflation or Ukraine or whatever and it's done.
Whatever the right wants to push. Yeah, it'll be Benghazi again, maybe just because they miss it. They'll bring it back.
So here's what I'm saying is we know the stakes. The stakes are democracy or not, right? And it is true that Zev, this future that you paint, this devastating dystopian future, that is our future, but we actually are not in it yet. We will not be in it until the day after the November 22nd, 22 elections. Right. And until that moment, I refuse to yield. Okay. So I'm doing a moonshot. We've built, my two teammates and I, Lori Spivak and my teammates Ashley and Lori, we've built this framework. We have a war machine built. It is ready to go. It is going to explain exactly what we can do that's tangible and quick, given our constraints. It operates with the system that we have in place as part of the strategic understanding. It operates with how the opposition operates as part of its strategic understanding. It has never been tried before, okay? It's totally different. It is not something that has ever been tried before. That is why I'm convinced we must try it, because we know for sure if we do not try something different, we are screwed. So
I mean, the one thing we do have on our side is that we have so many people that are motivated. I mean, it does feel to me like a majority of people are more motivated to keep democracy and are anti-autocracy for many obvious reasons. But they're there. There's lots of people out there willing to put up the fight, even now, 5 years later after we had to endure it. So it's about getting those people motivated.
If I can say anything positive about it, the one thing, and obviously Rachel's working on this. I'm putting together a large. It'll probably be a super PAC like organization. And I've got a large email list, and I've got sort of thing. Is that we can, those of us out there these days, we can raise, large amounts of money through email, through other ways online in small donations for people who care, right? There are some donors who get it that are out there. That it's not that the inside game hasn't, it works for us here and there. There's a lot of problems with it. And if enough of us are out there, and pushing this and saying at the same time, yeah, we got to hold them accountable for COVID. Yeah, we have to hold them accountable for the coup and go at them. There is hope. I'm not sitting here saying, oh my God, yay, hallelujah, we're going to be fine. Trust me. No, I'm quite concerned, very worried that we're headed in a very bad direction to a very bad place. But I'm just saying, at least there's a way to do this. And enough people, I know, because I talk to political people, as Rachel does, a lot of people are motivated to go out there and push a harder message and be smarter strategically. So I'm hoping.
I've got a TV network I'll throw in there.
Loaded and ready to fire some fucking guns, dude.
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
Well, that's a good place to end it, because it's about the only positive way we can do that, right? Is just think that there is a plan and that we'll get there. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I want to let you guys have the opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you. Cliff Schechter, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your Twitter handle and everything else we need to know about your empire.
Yeah, the empire striking back, you mean?
Yeah.
You can find me at Cliff Schechter on Twitter. Probably of all social media, most of which I hate, is where I'm the most active, because Twitter is Twitter. So just at Cliff Schechter. I've got a podcast I do with John Aravosis. We talk a lot about these issues. There he is, UnPresidented podcast. So it's just Patreon /Unpresidented podcast.
Yeah. Probably.
And my firm, Blue Amp Strategies. We did some ads for Biden last time around. We've done them for numerous groups, and also public relations. I like to think we're pretty good at that. So there you go. You can find me in any of those spots.
Okay, that's Cliff Schechter. That's SCHECTER, as I found out the hard way when I misspelled it the first time.
We dropped the second H off on the boat over here.
Yeah, thank you. I should have sent me a memo. I didn't get it, but
it's all good.
It looks fine in my final version of the poster. And Rachel Bidikofer, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and your PAC?
Yeah, and my name, which is just Bidikofer, which is so much easier than Cliff's name.
I've learned how to spell that one.
I know. And actually, on this panel, I feel, actually almost pretty like Smith-like,
It's true.
No, please find me. I mean, I would really like you to find me on strikepack.com, our Act Blue page especially. I'd like you to come and watch some of the 8 ads that we've created that show how to take it to the metal against the GOP. And on Twitter at RachelBidikofer.com or at Rachel Bidikofer, and then the Twitter account at StrikePack. Yep. Okay, so at Rachel Bidikofer, that's spelled BITECOFER, and then StrikePack is Strike, STRIKE. PAC. All right, there. Spelling done for the day. You can find Narrative at narrative.org. And you can also support our Patreon at patreon.com/narrative. And that's the after show for this week. Thank you guys for being here. It's really exciting to have new voices on the show, which is so awesome. And you guys are terrific. So hopefully I'll have you back on the show. I would never choose to watch the collapse of democracy with anybody else. Oh, well, that's fantastic.
I feel good about it. You're saying that too. No, seriously, Zev, this is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. We'll have you on again. And maybe we'll try save democracy while we're at it. So good night, everybody. Yeah. Thank you for being here and have a great weekend. Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. Join today and support truly independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. That's patreon.com/narrative.